To the May Bride, Eternal Return. I know that I will meet you again, and that everything will happen once again exactly as it did so long ago, except that this time I will not allow you to die. I will hold you in my arms, defending you against the dark waters of death, because this time I will remember everything. I will remember that you have already died. But will I remember? A turn of the wheel. The comrade. For many years, he had been traveling through these inhospitable, unpopulated regions. He had crossed forests, lakes, high snow-covered passes, drawing ever closer to the Great South. Some natives greeted him reverently, others ran away when they saw his blue eyes and golden hair. An Ancahuinca, they called him, an inhabitant of the city of the Caesars. They didn't know that he was exactly the opposite. In fact, he was searching for that city. His sword and armor weighed him down. Also, he was dragging a cauldron. It was some time since his horse, with a star on its forehead, had leapt into a ravine. He had been able to save himself by grabbing hold of the branches of an apple tree that someone had planted in that wilderness. He was approaching a hillside covered with stunted trees and a few sickly flowers, which had been twisted by the southerly gales. At nightfall, a shadow appeared on the rocky wall, becoming clear as he came closer to it. It was a cave. A feeble light was shining from inside it. The man decided to spend the night there, protected from the prevailing cold. At first, he saw nothing. Then he realized that it was a big cave, with stalactites that gave off a crystal-like brilliance in the reflected light of some flames. He stepped forward into a central square and saw a man seated at a round table, which had been carved either out of the rock or perhaps out of a gigantic stalagmite. There was a blazing fire and 2 lighted torches fixed to the wall. The man appeared not to have heard him arrive. His eyes were closed, and he was drawing circles on the top of the table. On the ground were scattered a number of scrolls. Some were spread open, and he could see that they were maps. Approaching the table, he had the strange impression that he had already lived this scene. He struck the stone cover 3 times with his first as a signal. The man opened his eyes and stopped drawing. There was another stone seat beside the table. He sat down and was able to examine the man's face. It was thin and pale, with a broad forehead and black hair. The dark, feverish eyes fastened themselves on his. "You have come at last. I was expecting you. Are you capable of drawing a perfect circle with your eyes closed? Only if you can do this can you enter the city." "We have already done this. Why do it again?" "That is true. And then we fell into the circle. Now we have both reached the same point. The road we are following is the road of amber. These stalactites and stalagmites are made of that mysterious substance. From the maps that you see at my feet, you can tell that the city is not far away. Farther to the south, between these mountain ranges, near a lake, you will find its entrance." I had become convinced that the opening to that subterranean world was to be found in this cave. I have searched for it by concentrating my mind and drawing circles with my eyes closed. And now I know that it is not here. Perhaps it is farther to the south, towards the pole. Have you also retraced your steps backwards through time? I have, with the result that I felt the dizzy sensation of going against the current. My horse could not follow, so he leapt into a ravine. Can you feel how the ground trembles as we go forwards? This is because we are struggling to walk backwards, which displeases the second earth. It is the terror it feels knowing that it will be overtaken. It is also our fear of something alarming which is about to occur, the meeting with that being whom no one can look at face to face. These southern regions of the world are plagued by earthquakes because they have always held out the possibility of this meeting. They are the vestibule of immortality. He bent down to pick up one of the scrolls. Spreading it out on the circular stone, he pointed to certain regions with his dagger. You must continue your journey towards here. The Insula Avellanus, which was believed to be in Albion, the White Land, is really in Albania. That is the true name of this world, which is older than the other one, the continent of the white gods and giants, which is populated on its surface by the slaves who escaped from Atlantis. But in that city for which we are searching, in that first interior earth, the white gods still live, and the women who possess powers of healing. They are the regions of pleasure. Alas, he said, I feel an insatiable thirst. That is the thirst of the pilgrim, which can only be quenched by drinking from the chalice of green stone. Its liquor alone can sate our longing for eternal love, comrade. Now I remember, your name is Jason. You were the first warrior troubadour, and your dog's name is Leo. Now my dog's name is Ares. Oh, speak to me of the Grail. It is guarded in a sanctuary somewhere in this area. It was brought here by those who were defeated in the Great War of the Worlds on the sinking of the polar island, where the animals and the fruits conversed with the humans, where my dog could answer me with words that I could understand. The apples of Avalon moved, coming closer to our hearts. The Grail is a jewel which fell from the crown of our guide Lucifer when it was broken in his battle in the heavens, when he was struck by the sword of the enemy. It is said that possibly he himself carried it to the North Pole, descending like a bright light, like a fiery disk. There he founded Ultima Thule, the capital of Hyperborea. Because of this, the Grail has been called the Stone of Exile. The armies that accompanied Lucifer are the defeated forces from a war between extraterrestrials, the outlaws, the exiles, who still preserve the piece of the broken crown of their guide, in the form of a stone on which is inscribed the law and the great secret. It is also an emerald chalice in which a liquor made from the blood of extraterrestrials is drunk. The indecipherable signs protect the wisdom and the history of a great myth of love. When Hyperborea and Atlantis were destroyed, the white gods, who had already emigrated to this other continent, entered the interior earth, the hollow earth, its double. The mystery is guarded at the South Pole. The liquor is the blood of our guide, Lucifer. I have heard tell, he interrupted, that in the polar oaks our guide lies asleep, and that he will be awakened when time has ended. He is alive, and yet not alive. He is dead, and yet not dead, because the Grail keeps one in a state of non-death, as if preserved in sleep. It is believed that the name Grail was read in the stars in very ancient times. When the stars were scanned, this name was discovered. Yes, the Grail fell from the stars. But we should not speak of this except at the given time and in the appointed place. We run the risk of our faces changing color and shape. It could be that this is the time and place. The disks of light that we now see appearing and disappearing in the sky, moving at the speed of thought, changing shape and color as they emit music and seem to read the minds and feelings of men, are the new Grail, the reincarnation of its legend. They have carried off our guide, and they will return him to us. They are all-powerful. They can bring the dead back to life. If we do not forget to ask the question, like Parsifal, they will take us to our guide. But beforehand, we must triumph in the great tests of the mystery of the Grail. The light from the disk is blinding. When it appears, the lights of the city go out. The disk takes us outside time. It makes the sleep of centuries seem less than a second. In it, the white gods came down from the sky. I have revealed the secret of the new Grail to you. Look at my face. Do you recognize me now? Yes, he said. Your name is Jason. The land of the Grail trembles. I tremble. No other light can compare with the light of the Grail. He who has foreseen it or dreamed it is lost to this world, because the Grail is the driving force behind every enterprise. It is at the origin of the war we are fighting. Once we have stepped onto the road which leads us to the city where the Grail is kept, it would be better never to have embarked on the enterprise than to abandon it. Even falling and getting up again, wounded, dying, we must go on until we find it. We must never turn back, because the Grail is the medicine, the food of eternal life. It is transfiguration. Without God, without all the gods, who do not want us to succeed, with only our ancient Hyperborean fury and the memory of the beloved in our heart, we will achieve the Grail. The Grail is the stone of light, he cried. It quenches our thirst. It multiplies our food. It feeds us internally, creating inside us the light that enables us to find the narrow passageways that lead us to the room where our beloved lies sleeping. Before it was found, there were no roads. The fire which has been lit will never go out again. I lived in the forest like a pure madman. I was the son of a widow. Or perhaps you were? My first fight was against her, for the independence of my soul. But how much I owe her! The light of the torches slowly dimmed. The night was drawing on. Soon it would be midnight. The interplay of light and shadow on the walls of the cave and on the sharp edges of the stalactites had an almost hypnotic effect. His eyes were slowly closing. He heard him say, "You are the sword. She is the chalice." Then a melodious whistle, which seemed to come from his childhood, and the dog called Ares came and lay down at his feet in the circle. The dream. The men entered the cave and came into the center. They wore black gowns and carried swords. In all, there were now 12 of them. Around the table were 13 seats. A milky white light, seemingly given off by the amber, enveloped the scene. Then his comrade changed his seat, looking for the 13th one. He felt his heart stop beating. An icy coldness gripped him. He wanted to move, to stop his comrade, but he was unable to. He managed to force open his lips, which felt as heavy as stone, and tried to shout to him. "Don't do that. Don't sit there, in the siege perilous. Don't do it again, comrade. Don't die again, leaving me alone in the fight." His comrade didn't listen to him and sat down in that seat. The other 11 people, for the guide was not there, took hold of the top of the round table with both hands, as it had begun to spin wildly in the direction in which the first earth revolved. An earthquake flattened the walls and the stalactites and stalagmites of the cave, while a huge cleft opened in the rock beneath the siege perilous and swallowed Jason up. Above the polar circle appeared the disk of light in the form of a celestial stone, an emerald chalice, announcing its presence within each of them as a star. And then there was no one left but the man and his comrade's dog. The dog on the frozen plain. Why have you woken me? I was much happier there. I was living in a dream. Don't you have anything better to teach me on this side of things? Jason had said. He remembered having heard him say that many years ago, in the past, or perhaps in the future. But now he was no longer here. He had been swallowed up by a dream which was more real than any reality. A cleft had opened beneath the stone circle beside the Siege Perilous, along that path of pure dreaming which he had chosen in a remote past during the years of his youth. The man left the cave, followed by his comrade's dog. It was dawn in those icy regions, and he began the next stage of his journey as the pilgrim of longing. He looked for his star in the sky. There it was, twinkling gently, sending him its secret, as yet undeciphered message. It seemed to him that, in its velvety and penetrating light, it was telling him, Jason is not dead. In some part of this world, his life has been transformed. He stroked the head of the dog, which shook its curly coat and stared at him, asking him the reason for its existence, why it was there, why it was a dog. It was only for a second, because instinct quickly took over, the instinct of the guide dog, the dog which leads the blind. It began to sniff the sickly bushes, the rocks which stuck out of the snow. Now it would be the dog which would follow the non-existent road, inventing it for him, following the scent of that flower which is also non-existent, called calafate, which grows in the inhospitable regions of the south, where the cold and the light of the black sun of midnight and the polar ices begin to make themselves felt. For weeks and months they walked on without meeting anyone. They were rounding the edges of the peaks of the Cordillera of the Andes. A delicate perfume wafted towards them, as if from a borderland, or a universe cut off by the waters. Then the dog began to descend the mountainside. A frozen plain appeared, with 2 or 3 bushes on the horizon, bent by the wind. The dog came to a halt, panting, with its wet tongue hanging out. It looked at him fixedly. The man said to himself, "How can people say that dogs can't speak? It is saying farewell to me with its eyes. I understand perfectly." The dog sat down, there in the space between the peaks and the frozen plain. Still looking at him fixedly, it began to speak to him in his own language. "I have fulfilled my duty towards you, comrade. I am going to join Jason, drawn to him by his enchanted whirlpool, his whistle which seems to come from a distant childhood. They are calling me. You don't need me outside you anymore. I will howl inside you, like my brother the wolf, when the hour of your leaving also comes, when you will be reunited with us in the city of dawn." And it began to run, slowly at first, then faster and faster, straight across the frozen plain. Some blackbirds appeared in the sky and flew very close to it, and as they all faded into the distance, approaching the twisted trees on the horizon, it seemed as if the birds were swooping down onto the dog, onto its coat of golden curls. And then he could see it no longer, because a thick mist covered the plain. For a long time he walked in this mist. He never knew how he managed to cross the plain, because he walked as if in a dream. And thus it was that eventually he found himself either inside a house with an old man, like a gigantic mountain, whose face was marked with crevices of mineral and whose eyes had square pupils, or walking beside him. The Master of the Sphinx. The old man sat down beside the piled-up bones of the skeleton of the prehistoric Milodon. "Let us talk," he said. "Question me as you would question yourself." The man stretched out beside him. "I am surrounded by dead, both men and animals, and as if that weren't enough, Now there's this skeleton. Can you tell me if any part of us continues to exist after death? Your question is badly put. What you should ask is whether there is any reason to believe that anything survives death. Is there? A child in whom the ego has not yet appeared, who talks in the third person, still has the dreams of an individualized being with a clearly defined personality, which affect his whole adult life. Where is the ego which is not there, which is not yet conscious? Perhaps in his guardian angel, which has not yet lost its wings? If the mind is capable of functioning outside the mortal body, then it is incorruptible. It is outside the confines of time and space. It lives in the stars, in the ray of green light. If it has once been outside the body, it will be so again, which does not mean to say that you can rid yourself of your ego. On the contrary, your ego can rid itself of your body, but you can never rid yourself of it. It will always be there. Even in a moment of great ecstasy, there is an ego which knows that there was such a moment. There will always be an ego to know that you no longer exist. The master vanished. He remembered that a long while ago, in a faraway land, he had met him beside the Sphinx. Then he had spoken to him of love and crime. He had told him that it is necessary to love like one committing a crime. On his finger, the master of the Sphinx wore a ring on which was carved a serpent. The master who understands the language of the animals and flowers. When the mist dispersed, he found himself standing beside a handsome old man with clear eyes and a sweet smile. He was contemplating the mountains and a blue lake set in a landscape whose vegetation reminded him of the Valley of the Flowers in the Himalayas. "I have lost my friend's dog," he explained, "but really he was my dog." "He will have gone to rejoin Leo," he replied. "Who is Leo, master?" Leo is the astrological age in which animals conversed with men. There are magical happenings in this world. For example, a dog which finds its master's house after being abandoned more than 100 kilometers away. Nature is wise. If you listen to it, you can hear the voice of God, of all the gods. Leo also understands the language of the flowers and the plants. When I was a child, I too could speak with the flowers. It is possible that my ego was dispersed among them before it entered my body. Perhaps a part of it still remains in the landscape, and thus my love of nature may be no more than love of myself. Happy are those who in old age are permitted to experience once again the emotions of their earliest infancy, to listen to the same melody. I have just met the master of the Sphinx, but he spoke to me in symbols. I would almost say that he interpreted them. He has the right to do so, he explained, because he is an immense mountain. The smile of the master who could converse with the animals and flowers was so gentle and his blue eyes were so clear that the man felt his heart fill with a deep, melancholic presentiment that this meeting too was drawing to a close. The signs. When fundamental events are close to reproducing themselves, although they almost always take us by surprise, there are signs which should alert us. There are signs which appear in our souls and in the landscape around us, like a muted music which appears in a ray of light and moves across the waters. The sky was a cold, pale blue. The snow and ice made walking through the rocky pass difficult. Now and then he saw some ferns, looking sad and limp as they struggled to grow in crevices in the rocks. A ray of cold light illuminated a solitary stone on which lay a copihue, like a bell of crystallized blood, transparent in the almost polar light. The man picked up the flower because he knew that it had been left there for him, and on the stone he read the message, Come what may, I will proceed to walk the way of beauty, the way that leads towards the height that seems to touch the sky. Steep is the path, but filled with light from those that climbed before me, who left on every jutting rock a lantern glowing with their dreams. Halloween. On a plateau on the mountainside, near the unattainable peak, lay a small lake and a semi-petrified forest of fir trees and tall pines. The water of the lake was partially frozen, so that in places one could walk on it. In this lonely, icy landscape stood a cabin. The radiant summit of Mount Malamoyu stood out clearly, leaning at a perilous angle. Although the lake was small, the man took months, maybe even years, to walk round it and reach the entrance to the cabin. He opened the small door and found himself inside a circular room. On the floor were deerskins and some branches from a cinnamon tree. The embers of a dying fire gave off a blue light. Beside it, dressed in a thin red gown, stood a woman. A headband of the same color held back her hair, which cascaded over her shoulders like a golden waterfall. She looked at him fixedly, and he felt that, for the first time, he was being stripped of his ego. It seemed to him as if it was dissolving in a sweet emotional sensation. "Oh gods," he said to himself, "it is Halloween." For a moment, he lost himself in the magic of her eyes. "Let us look at each other," she said. "We are Hyperboreans." "Where have you heard this before?" Then the woman began to tremble, and he realized that she was about to fall into the fire. He managed to hold her up. "The earth was shaking," she explained. "My horse leapt into a ravine. The branch of the apple tree couldn't support my weight. I was brought here by a miracle, carried by a ray of light. Only because I had to wait for you, the fire too is burning out." He laid her down on the skins, making her a bed of cinnamon and fir branches. He rekindled the fire, which quickly gave off its blue-green light again. However, the room was not cold. The walls of ice, which appeared opaque from the outside, seemed transparent from the inside, giving a view over the lake and the semi-petrified forest, which, from a distance, looked like slender serrated mountains, and the white peak rising into the sky. The night filled with stars, and it was traversed by those musical lights which can read the thoughts of men. What she looked like. Her forehead was like the disk of the moon. Her eyes shone like the morning star, with a deep, dewy light. Her golden lashes were like petals which had fallen from the sun in autumn. When they were closed, it seemed as if the wings of birds had shut out the light of day. Her neck was long, like that of the statues in a temple. Her delicate arms, her slender legs, were like the roads that lead us to and from the enchanted city. Her hands, with a tracery of delicate blue veins, gently stirred the air, as if weaving her dreams. Her golden hair floated in the breeze from the glaciers, becoming entangled in the branches of the Hyperborean oak trees. Stretched out beside the light of the green flames, she herself was beyond the god of the cold and storms. Her voice was like music flowing from the depth of night. "I saw you arrive, riding astride an arrow. Therefore I shall call you Avarice, which is the name of the god of our lost continent. Avarice loved Halloween, the fifth-born daughter of the city of transparent ice, which revolves but stays still. I have the power to put you in contact with your star. I am the roof which will shelter you from the storm. My love will give us peace and defend us from all danger. You will find peace in combat, but it will be I who will fight within you, and your bravery will protect us to the end. I am within you, I am you, my fate is linked with yours, and you will have no other companion, now or in the depths of the grave. I will be constantly at your side in the great war, and if you remain loyal to me till the end of time, if you believe in me steadfastly, bravery and good fortune will never forsake you. Only with you can I enter the city, in your mind, in the memory of your heart, and when you have reached it, you will find me waiting there for you, to hand you the chalice filled to the brim with the liquor of immortality and eternal love. This is the mystery, O Avars. Suddenly, he was overcome by tiredness, as if the great effort of traveling and searching through many ages had exhausted him, and he stretched out beside the fire, with his head in his hands. She touched his forehead. It seemed to him as if a whole life, a whole turn of the wheel, and much, much more, had come together in this momentous peak of the spiral. Through his clouded eyes he watched the fire, without speaking, until he was again able to tell her about his lost comrade and his dog. "This has happened so many times," he exclaimed, "and I have been unable to change a thing." To comfort him, she told him the legend of their ancestors, the seekers of the city of dawn. The White Gods. We are a solar race, but from that sun which lies on the other side of all the suns. Our star is close by, and appears to the walkers of the dawn to show them the way, beyond the sun of gold and the black sun, to the mansions of the ray of green light, from whence love and dreaming come to us. The memory of light shows us that the white gods are the fallen warriors who sought refuge in that star. The story goes that they came down to live at the North Pole, on the continent of Hyperborea, which enjoyed a temperate climate during the Golden Age. When that continent disappeared, when the catastrophe in the skies was repeated, the white gods withdrew into the interior earth, although a few of them went to a transoceanic continent to the west, where the sun of the Golden Age had not yet set, because that was where the black sun of the South Pole rose, at the point where Arthos, the Hyperborean bear, became Antarcthos, the bearless bear of the southern continent, where Stonehenge, the observatory of the sun, became Tiahuanacu, the transmitter of Venus, the star of Lucifer. America Albania was the land of the white gods after the disappearance of Hyperborea and Ultima Thule. They moved from one pole to the other. They carried a sword, a lance, and a cauldron, together with the soma plant. With them, they also brought the stone which fell from the broken crown of Lucifer, the king of the white gods, whom others have called Apollo, Abraxas, Siva, Quetzalcoatl. The ancient Celts and the Vikings knew that the white gods, their ancestors, came to this ancient transoceanic land, where the midnight sun rises and which is traversed by a river of liquid gold. They came to search for them and built their monoliths and towers here as signs for those who would follow them. But they didn't find the enchanted city, because the black sun of midnight doesn't shed its light outside the earth, but inside it. This is where the white gods, our guides, live. The green light that streams out from both poles in the dream of the black sun as it longs for the ray of the green light. The entrances to the interior earth are to be found at the poles, as well as in the Antarctic oasis and possibly on top of this mountain. They can be reached by traveling through the deep waters which flow beneath the ices. In this interior earth are the cities of Agartha, Shambhala, and the Caesars, inhabited by the immortal Siddhas. There the Golden Age still exists. The discs of light, covered in orichalcum, fly out from there. They carried our guide off to a place of safety. It is the invulnerable paradise which our people have rediscovered, where the science of resurrection and eternal love is guarded. It is the starting point of the journey to our star. I, too, searched for the path, the sign, the gateway, but I am a woman, and I know that I will not attain the city by my own efforts. Only in your mind, in your dreams, will I be able to do so. What a great risk I run, and what great danger I face if you don't imagine me, if you don't recreate me, dreaming it all for both of us. If you don't love me for all eternity, if you don't bring me back to life. Don't lose your self-control. There must be purity in the defeats which lead to victory. Don't allow your desire to reach the city to become excessive. You will find it when you have stopped searching for it, when you think you have lost it. You will have reached it without realizing it, carrying me in your most secret thoughts. Perhaps the gates of the city are the gates of death. Perhaps you will have to change your body, like a piece of clothing, in order to enter it. Or perhaps navigate in a ship with all its lights on, which moves beneath the surface of the water and is crewed by ghosts. Or reach an island in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by flames, or a castle of diamond, which revolves like the pole. That is where the women with supernatural powers live. They will give you a glove, a pair of gloves, which you must take when I die. They will make you invisible, and with your incorporeal body, born out of the flames of that island, you will cross the walls of the city of dawn like a wind blowing from the stars. Listen, beloved, never lose your self-control. Don't allow desperation to enter your search. If you fail at the gates of the city, when you have reached its walls, it will vanish in a fraction of a second, and it will be as if it had never existed, like a non-existent flower shedding its petals, and you yourself will become convinced that it was all an illusion. Then, indeed, we will have died forever. The narrow passages. He fell asleep beside the fire, listening to the musical sound of her words fading further and further into the distance. She placed some branches as a pillow beneath his head and lay down beside him, turning her face towards the flames. Her eyes also began to close, and they both dreamed the same dream. In the floors of the cabin was a flagstone which could be raised to give access to a subterranean world. They began to descend a staircase which at first was made of ice and then of marble. It was covered with the leaves of laurel and cinnamon trees. For a long while they continued their descent, and all the time there was this clear white light from an unknown source which surrounded them. Finally, the staircase came to an end. They heard a soft, almost inaudible whisper. Before them flowed the dark waters of a subterranean river. On the wall of the rocky quay, he read, "Every 700 years the laurel will flower again." And he saw carvings of a dove and of a man in the form of a swastika, turning in the opposite direction of time. They began to hear a faint melody which rose out of the water from a half-submerged object that was gliding along like a sea-wolf. In reality, it was a ship which was navigating beneath the surface of the water, with all its lights on. It was crewed by dead men. Its captain climbed up onto the bridge. He was blind. However, he had a third eye in the middle of his forehead, which was open and shone like a carbuncle. The cabin ordered his crew, who wore strange garments, to lower 2 small boats into the river. Then he held a spyglass to his third eye and pointed it towards the region of the ray of green light. And El Kalusha sailed away while its crew sang, "To every sailor the gods have given a comrade. While one sleeps, the other keeps watch on the bridge. When one doubts, the other gives him his faith. When one falls, the other discovers the oasis of ice for both of them. And then, be ready to tally the sails, toten the braces to the wind. Take good advantage of the south wind that makes us sail swiftly. 1,000 delights that you will never forget await you in distant lands." And the ghost ship sailed off into the distance with all its lights on. The boats were very small. They had to take one each. Inside each boat was a glove. They realized that when they put it on, they would be only partially invisible, being able to move equally in 2 worlds, in this world and in the other world that lies on the other side of the light of this earth. Perhaps in this way they might be able to enter the city. Each boat was drawn along by a parallel current until they reached some very narrow entrances cut into the rock, which looked as if they were made of shiny metal and which seemed to be revolving. Funnels of orichalcum, they thought, in which the tiny boats only just fitted. And then they couldn't see each other anymore, and didn't know if they would ever meet again, nor if they would land in the same place at the end of those narrow passages, which appeared to have no exits. The suitor. Early in the morning, he went towards the forest in search of food. It was a coniferous forest. He used to return there frequently, spending most of his time in its dingy thickets. He experienced the sweet anguish of losing his beloved during the day and recovering her in the evening, of going away from her so as to be closer to her, of losing her so as to recover her. He walked through the forest beside the lake in an ecstasy of love and desire, happy in the knowledge that she was close by, that he had recovered her within that circle which turns endlessly, where the possibility of meeting again was always a lucky occurrence, and also terrified by the doubt that it was only a dream. He was walking round the foot of a sacred mountain and sighing with love, and with each deep sigh he picked up a fistful of snow and crushed it to his breast to cool his ardor, as he called out her name. If he had seen her appear at that moment, he would have asked her, "Who are you, and what do you want of me?" And if she replied, "I am your beloved, and I have come because you called me," he would have said, "Oh, I am so busy with this love that consumes me that I have no time for you any more." This is what happens with the suitor, until one day his sighs forsake him. The flight. Again they dreamed the same dream. They were on the edge of the plateau on the great mountain. Below them were rocky precipices. Beyond, invisible, lay the immense ocean. They took hold of each other's hand, and moved by the same impulse, leapt into the abyss. But instead of falling, they found themselves gliding above the landscape with a feeling of great freedom. They passed gently above the rocks and tried to decipher their inscriptions, looking at the signs, the carved faces, the tops of the trees, and the deep chasms that yawned open in the earth and the ice. He tried to discover the ghost of the dog, the remains of its golden fleece. They flew southward and saw the city of hunger and thirst, the city of Petrus Sarmiento de Gamboa appear on the horizon, then the great ocean. They continued ever farther southward until they saw an island on which stood a castle with 12 black towers, each bearing the sign of a revolving cross. A drawbridge linked the towers with the central keep. The castle was made of stone and shone brightly. The island was surrounded by fire. On the farthest borders of the south lay the pole. "There is no pole," she explained to him. "Look carefully. Let us fly higher." They could see an enormous circular aperture. "The pole is in there, inside this aperture. It doesn't exist. It's an apparition. Let us go inside." As they went deeper and deeper inside, they saw flowers made of precious metal, rivers of turquoise, gigantic animals of a race which had disappeared from the surface millions of years ago, and they all spoke an intelligible language, the flowers, the fruits, the animals, and the golden water, which invited them to drink it. But they were unable to stop there or go still deeper inside, and they realized that they were not yet to be permitted to reach the city. "This is the impregnable paradise where our guide lies sleeping, and where one day he will awake." They went back, still holding hands, gliding gently alongside the skuas and the condors until they landed on the icy plateau on the mountain from which they had taken off. The wounded king. One midday, he found himself in front of a pyramid-shaped rock on the edge of the lake. He had the vivid impression that he was reliving something that had happened before. He knew that rock. He had been here before, during the eternal return of these events. He walked some way off so as to retrace his steps towards the rock and examine it more closely, concentrating intensely with his eyes half closed. And in the clear light of day, two figures appeared. Curiously, the man was not wearing armor or a sword, but was dressed in strange dark-colored clothes and was leaning on a thin walking stick. The clothes were from some future far-off time, which he had somehow foreseen. Despite this, he knew that the man was a king. His eyes were feverish, sunken, surrounded by shadows. His forehead was broad. The thick mustache of a warrior covered his lips. He had uncovered his head and was speaking politely to the woman. She was also wearing a dark-colored close-fitting gown. She was tall and slender. While he spoke, as if terror-stricken, his whole body trembled. He realized that the couple couldn't see him because he was standing inside a still distant vibration of the light. His situation inside this energy recurrence did not coincide in time with the event, which, owing to a strange trick of the light from these mountains, this midday, was mistakenly projecting these images. But, he thought, in some other law or non-law, he must have encountered, or would encounter, this king and this woman when the images and the reality coincided. Oh, let it be so. And he was permitted to listen with impunity to what they were saying. Perhaps that rock was a sensitive spot in the earth with a capability of projection, or a rent or an inversion in space, which could make time travel towards the past and the future come towards us. And what they were talking about was precisely the subject of the ego and time, or rather, of the ego and eternally within time, without going outside time. The man explained in a low voice, "Everything repeats itself eternally. Time is infinite, but energy is not, and it has to reproduce its creations. the last becomes the first once again. The serpent bites its own tail. And in this hallucinatory situation, it is impossible to free oneself from the ego and its recurrent experiences. When the energy in your body becomes exhausted, it will be reproduced not once, but ad infinitum throughout eternity. When the will to power again crosses the same circuit of light beside this midday rock, and this ego, which I feel myself to be, will become myself, and you will be yourself. There is no way to escape this. When that extinguishing of consciousness that we call death occurs, and will and energy abandon our exhausted bodies, time will also disappear. And although an eternity may pass before energy repeats us, it will seem only a second to our returning consciousness, because there was no time. And the same rock, the same air, the same grass will still be here, and so will you and I. The same story, and I will again say, Ich liebe dich, Ariadna. And I will go mad again as the only way to escape from this horror, this ego which has always been here, in an eternal present, even if an eternity passes between one turn of the wheel and another. And this ego will never know if others really exist, if all the egos are not just myself. The only way to escape from my ego lies in madness, and I will call this the midday, experiencing all the egos, being Caesar, Alexander, Dionysus, and the crucified one. The woman seemed to sense the presence of a stranger. She turned towards where he stood and raised her hand in a regal gesture, as if toasting him with a non-existent cup. She said, "This is the king who was wounded by a cruel lance. His pain increases whenever Saturn shines. You must avenge him, restore his ravaged lands to him, find him a way out, break through the circle with your sword, beside this rock of revelation, in the depths of midday, which is also the depths of his midnight. This rock produces blindness in whoever looks at it from within a feverish circuit of light. This is what happened to this king." The woman's hand, which was still raised, caught hold of an object given it by an eagle. Stretching out her hand as if through the rent in space and time, she passed the object over to him. In fact, there were two objects, a fruit and a ring. "That is the fruit of return," she explained. "Do not eat it with your beloved. It grows in the wastelands. But you may wear the ring. It is the ring of resurrection." He asks the question. He didn't leave the cabin again. He could only find the fruit of return in these latitudes, and, seeing the end approaching, he preferred fasting to the horror that had been revealed to him. He collected conifer resin and turpentine in the belief that if he made a drink from them, it would prolong his beloved's life. Oh, if only they could drink gold and silver, ambrosia, the liquor of eternal life. He didn't leave her side. Now he wanted to know, to penetrate with her the ultimate mystery of life and death, of reunions and losses, of the longing of the endless pilgrimage, of the eternal return and partings. Now he was going to ask the question. "When I was walking through the mist, across the frozen plain, I believe I met some masters. I had lost my comrade and his dog. The master who could converse with the animals and plants told me the following. There is a basic note which is given at the beginning of life. Some people are lucky enough to be able to repeat it at the end. And the master of the Sphinx completed the idea for me by explaining that this note affects some people's whole life, not just its beginning and end. I heard it in what was almost my earliest childhood. This is how it was given to me. Suddenly I felt myself to be me. Before that, I had felt myself to be dispersed in the landscape, and I could also converse with the animals and flowers. They spoke to me, and I understood them. Or did I speak to myself through them? When the ego finally took possession of me, I believe I stopped being able to understand that language, although I'm not certain. It is possible that I retained that faculty for some time, feeling in myself to be me, and yet still being them, being in them. But with human beings, it was different. The painful question I asked myself was this: is it possible that they feel themselves to be me in the same way as I do? It was impossible for me to believe it. I, feeling myself to be me, in the middle of an ocean of other me's who also feel themselves to be me, but not me, this me that I feel myself to be. Oh, it is impossible to explain this experience. Think for a moment. Everything that happens in the universe is known only by me, only me. It is my ego that registers it, my consciousness. What others say, what they write, the discoveries they pass on, I register, I know. If the world comes to an end, if the continent of Hyperborea is submerged, if our great guide loses the war, I am the one who knows it. How can I be sure that other people also exist, and that the world can continue if I disappear, if my consciousness doesn't register it? Perhaps all the people round me who live and die, their faces, even yours, which is so beautiful, are projected by my fevered imagination, dreamed by my ego. And when I observe them closely, in their almost infinite varieties, I have to make an effort to recognize myself in a hallucinatory hall of mirrors. Also, can I seriously believe that my ego can perish if I am me, if I am the only one who can feel myself to be this me, and no one else can feel like this, that is, to be this me of mine? When I perish, if ever I do perish, somewhere, perhaps on this very spot, or somewhere else in this immense universe, or some time, someone will again feel himself to be me, and this ego, which feels like this, will be I myself. Do you understand? Can you grasp this? Can you comprehend this feeling? We have heard tell of the Tulka, beings who are more than one ego, who live in several places in the universe at the same time, with simultaneous consciousness, and who do not say I, but we, when speaking about themselves, underlining their parallel existences in different bodies, or in one single but ubiquitous one, in many centers of space-time. And even this is I who am saying this, am citing it, the Tulka theory, and my I doesn't feel it because it cannot verify it from its own experience. The master of the Sphinx stated, if in the moment of greatest ecstasy the ego were not present, there would be no one there to know that there had been a moment of ecstasy. It is impossible to escape from the ego. The master of the Sphinx would say that the way out may be found through strengthening the ego until it becomes an absolute ego, an absolute personality. I have seen the wounded king, in order to escape from this circle drawn in the belly of a demon, he has gone mad. I have thought about love, because that is my note which has been sounding since my infancy. Might it be possible that individualized magic love could open a door through which I could escape from this circle? But it will always be I who loves, who sees the beloved. How can I not believe that I projected her, if when I perish, if ever I do perish, she too will perish? Only if my I returns will she return. Gently she interrupted him. Look at me. Don't you see that half my face is yours? Only half of it is still mine. Beloved, don't fall asleep, because I am going to answer your question. When the twilight of the gods began to fall over the world, and iron took the place of gold, Wotan, or Odin, whispered a great secret in the ear of Baldur as he lay dying on the pyre of perfumed sandalwood. Let us imagine what it might be. Before you were I, what were you? You were not an animal, nor were you a plant, although you could converse with them. You explained to me that even after the emergence of your conscious ego, you continued to converse with nature. For a time you didn't lose this faculty. So when the ego was not inside your body, where was it? And you, how did you feel without your ego? Were you a persona or not? Let me remember. Yes, the master of the Sphinx said that even a child has the dreams of a mature person which can affect his whole life. Where is this persona when the child still has no sense of the individual ego? In my case, I remember, when I was a year old, or perhaps less, I was leaning out of a tower, holding my grandfather's ring tightly in my hand. The woman of the house ran to take hold of me, because they were afraid that I would let it drop. But I remember, that child felt itself to be a persona. It knew the importance of the ring, and knew that it would never let it drop. It felt deeply offended by this lack of trust. That child was a very old and wise man, and when the ego became defined, it was a philosopher who asked himself the question. That is the difference, I believe, and this is the ring. I have recovered it. Only the ego enters the body. The persona, which is very old, seems to remain outside, in the landscape, in the animals and the plants. Or perhaps it only becomes partially incarnate, the ego being only a part of it, and the body its exact image, its reflection, a shadow of the light which has taken on a shape in order to travel around and gain knowledge in this world. What was at one time outside you is your guardian angel who moves away as your body and mind become hardened. As your ego becomes stronger, the persona becomes weaker. It disappears into the distance. It dissolves. It leaves you alone. Your guardian angel has abandoned you. And the ego, the I am I, can you ever get out of that? Perhaps by feeling that the persona which you were before you were ego still exists. And perhaps you may be able to become this persona again afterwards. Someone is waiting for you somewhere, as if beside a spring, awaiting your return. The person waiting for you doesn't have a face, but dreams that you will bring it one. But you don't have a face either. Your soul doesn't have one, because I am the face of your soul. But I am listening to you telling me all this with my ego. Yes, the road is irreversible. Even if you walk back along it, you will never reach the same point. Although the spiral may seem to reach the same spot, it will have a different meaning. It is not a question of renouncing the ego, but rather of making it eternal, attaching it to the persona to make a form and consciousness that can never be destroyed. In this way, the persona becomes a personality. You have become individualized. You have given your persona a face. This is a struggle against God, all the gods, and your angel. Because while wishing you to be victorious, in reality, they don't wish it. It is a solitary struggle without quarter, and you will fall and get up again many times. And you will only have me in your mind and in your heart. And I am a double-edged sword, because I will put you to the tests that could make you lose the battle, although I need your victory so much. Because I am the her who one day emerged from him, and once outside, rebelled and put everything at stake, including my nothingness. I am the her who longs to be your her. And even if you are victorious in the harsh tests set in this mystery, you won't be able to give a face to your persona unless you accompany me to the very end, unless you bring me back to life. Because I repeat, I am the face of your soul, just as you are the face of mine. I was projected, dreamed by a great him, and you were by a great her. Neither of them had a face. Because you are a man, you must fight the battle as a warrior. I must fight as a woman, by dying, giving you my nothingness, so that you can make it immortal, so that you can bring me back to life with your face. Without giving up your ego, you will regain the faculty the persona has of conversing with the animals, plants, and stars. Journey ever onward until one day you and your ego enter the city where I await you, and we will put on the mantle of absolute personality, because we will have escaped from the fatal circle of returns. We will be Nas. The Supplicant. Thousands of years ago, the darkest age, Kali Yuga, began. Kalki was at rest with his white horse in the interior city of green glass of his star. Here, beside the fire in a small dwelling made of blocks of ice, on a plateau near the peak of the sacred Mount Melamoyu, in the deep south of the world, he and she were lying on beds of cinnamon branches. The sleeves of her gown were full, and her snow-white arms, covered by a soft golden down, were visible through them. Her hair hung down to her waist like liquid gold, and the reflection of the flames brought magical changing lights into it, varying from copper to deepest gold, and finally pale gold. Her clear blue eyes were once again piercing into him, as if to tell him that there, in some undefined place, their union would be possible. In an uncreated, non-existent center, with love expressing itself in a glance. Her lips were smiling sweetly, with an inconsolable sadness. Her chin was like a fruit of paradise, with a tiny cleft in the middle. Her neck was long and slender. How was it possible to create so much beauty, he asked himself, and he felt that a subtle emanation from her skin and her veins was penetrating him, making him realize that she had always belonged to him, fusing with his cells, his blood. He could also read her thoughts. "There is more than one body," she explained to him. "All of ours are enveloped in an identical substance, imbued with the water of love. They are the ones that love. The last one to do so must be the one that you can now see, constructed from the heavy materials of this exterior earth. It is the visible double of the others which you as yet cannot see. The closest thing to this body is the aura. Love it, caress it, all my other bodies will feel it. He began to move closer to her, exclaiming, Halloween, Halloween, I have always loved you. I have sought you through all the worlds, through all the turns of the wheel, through an eternity. Only you will give me eternal life. Together we will attain it by loving and protecting one another. We will drink from the glorious cup. We will smash the walls of the circle of returns. We will open the doors to a universe which not even the greatest dreamers of longing have ever imagined. He reached her side, and as he caressed her aura, he whispered, First here, near your hair, the amber road which leads me to the primordial continent, to the nuptial homeland, where you hid the moonstone in the depths of the glaciers of the dawn. Then your forehead, as wide as the disk of the moon, which fell upon the world like a stone from the broken crown. And your eyes, oh, do not close them, as my world would be extinguished, and I am already blind to all other light. Your exquisite nose is a bird which flutters in the sunshine and the scents of spring. Your lips are that door which will open to allow me to gaze upon the city of dawn, because honey and milk are under your tongue. Now I am caressing the aura of your neck, a swan which will reintegrate us with the race of the kings of our blood, and your marble shoulders, as delicate as the breeze which stirred the crowns of the ancestral oaks. She trembled, with her eyes almost closed, as if in a trance. Her long lashes cast shadows on her cheeks, as though from the wings of an Andean condor. She raised her hands, very slowly, without opening her eyes, and began to caress his aura too. The man closed his eyes. When at last they opened them and could see each other again, he exclaimed, It's true. Only half your face belongs to you. The other half is mine. The kiss. She came even closer, so that he could feel the agitated rise and fall of her breasts, and she brushed his lips with hers. It was like the touch of a petal, or of honey stored in drifting icebergs, honey from polar bees or the midnight sun, honey from a copy hue surrounded by a halo of light from the morning star. Such a kiss produces unexpected consequences in a man. Either it causes him to lose his spiritual virility, his destiny as a sacred warrior, his hallowed reticence, or else it instills such strength in him that he is able to free the giants from their prison in the rocks and raise the continent of the spirit, El Ea, alongside the martyred coasts of the south of the world. The body of the absolute woman. She let her red gown fall, and she stood naked, while the flames enveloped her in a light which was nevertheless incapable of clothing her absolute nakedness. He could smell the woman's integral perfume, like a breath of soft air flowing from a universe preserved for him only. A whole continent to explore, with its seas, its hills, its shadows, its secrets. And now he remembered that on the other side of the light, when he first contemplated the woman, the warrior had succumbed, thus giving rise to the infinite turnings of the wheel. He carried her back to the bed of branches, beside the fire. He drew his sword and placed it between them. She stretched out an arm over the blade and clasped his hand. The scabbard of the sword. Beloved, do not fall asleep. Watch with me through this long night. We will be two sleepwalkers allowing ourselves to be guided by the legend of our white gods. They will show us the path and inspire us. Let us awaken tonight. How could we sleep? May this sword protect us. My love and desire for you are more powerful and inextinguishable than this fire. I know that they will not be calmed merely by my taking possession of your body. I am the scabbard of your sword, made of wood from the apple trees of Avalon, from the tree of paradise, from the Hyperborean oaks, from the tree whose silken threads join the earth to the sky. If you sheathe me carelessly, you will break me. How many times has this happened already in the circle of return? We only have a limited amount of time in which to put the pieces of the broken scabbard back together again, after which we will lose each other, absorbed into him, her, and her, him, and we will have lost our only chance of resurrection, of giving a face to our souls, of attaining a world beyond God, beyond all the gods, in a dream which not even the most impassioned walkers of the dawn could dream, to break down the walls of the great circle and end the turnings of the wheel. We have a limited number of opportunities to sound our notes in their purest form. We must do everything in our power to drink from the cup of immortality, discovering the stone of change. I am ready. I shall give you my death. I shall place my eternity in your hands and fulfill to the utmost the myth of feminine immortality. You must also fulfill the myth of virile immortality, and together we will have triumphed. The test. Thus were completed the different stages of this most ancient Hyperborean initiation of A-Mor, revealed in the mystery of the Grail, in the esotericism of the troubadours, and the Minnesänger of the High Middle Ages. Transported to the icy wastes of the south of the world, with Parsifal, in a Templar's ship, with the vermilion cross on its white sails, and all its lights on, as the saga tells us, and from whence it never returned, to the true kingdom of Hyperborea, of the white gods of America Albania. And while the ultimate test of this initiation was taking place in that ancient night, with a man and a woman lying naked side by side, separated by a sword, without taking possession of each other's physical body, she explained to him in her musical voice, full of longing for eternity, "The light doesn't come from the east. Light is only truly light in the depths of midnight. Now is the depths of midnight. The followers of Lucifer, of the morning star, do not beg to be allowed into heaven. They demand to be, because they feel they have done everything possible to merit being deified. At the end of our road, no fusion with a god or redeemer awaits us. Our way is not the way of ecstasy of the saints, but the way of separation of the magicians, of the white gods, who have become absorbed into the sources of creative energy, creating worlds, loving each other inside and outside eternally. We do not beg, like the lunar troubadour, take us back to where you took us from. We are going to try and change God, giving him a face. Therefore, my love, do not take possession of my body. Let us not create children of the flesh. I will make you pregnant with the son of death, and we will both remain virgins." "I understand," he whispered. "The chastity of the sacred warrior is the nobility of his sexual act, the refusal to tolerate all that is brutal, because his feeling for the beauty of that act prevents him doing so. The wounded king also said this. It is an immaterial irrevocability. The Grail doesn't tolerate unbridled passions. It loves pious reticence, a reverent attitude. And I will not destroy your magic virility, dividing your flesh and mine giving you children of the flesh to bring new opportunities to other individuals, when such a great possibility already exists for us. I will not lure you into loving my body in the only way known to the Dark Age, because that way death will swallow you up. I will never be the great devouring mother, the primordial female, who will turn you into a vanquished warrior, living in a dream of unfulfilled glories. I will be the she who leads you to heaven, because it is your magic virility which will enable us to travel along the river of death. Your sacred virility will enable us to return to life. Do you remember the words of the ascetic of the Grail? You will become a woman if you love the body of a woman. This is so, because only by becoming effeminate could you satisfy the erotic sensibilities of a woman's physical body. The chaste warrior is the most virile one. To take physical possession of the beloved is to lose one's soul. True possession is the mental possession of all her other bodies. With the memory of your beloved in your heart, you will achieve the Grail. The genuine orgasm isn't a physical one, but another, which is endless, and which is produced by your contact with my invisible bodies, where you will find the perfume of my visible body, the warmth of my lips, the amorous racing of my blood intensified, as I will find in yours. We must discover this love together when we are no longer made of mortal flesh, but of red, imperishable matter. By loving my body, which lies beside you, you will make it even more material. You will turn it into a body made of lead. In the Golden Age, men lived for more than 1,000 years. They were closer to the point of origin, so that they remembered everything. In the Dark Age, the Iron Age, we have fallen so low that it is almost impossible to go back along the current and return to the time when immortality was almost a permanent gift from heaven. So, our combat is more heroic. We have lost many turns of the wheel, my love. However, the cities of the immortals still lie hidden to help those who seek them with courage and who still possess the tiny spark. They will rescue them from the Dark Age before the final cataclysm. In their discs of orichalcum, of green light, they will carry them to the city where they will become part of that timeless order which, in all the worlds and as sons of light, fights against the forces of darkness, against the prince of slavery and his armies of strange beings who advance in the opposite direction to our myth of resurrection and eternal love. This holy war maintains the balance between the opposing universes. We will belong to this order even when we will be immortals, in order to help those who bear the sign, giving inspiration to the seekers of the dawn, the heroes, but without intervening directly, so as not to transgress the secret code. Thus, I will also follow your enterprise when I am dead, without being able to intervene in your conflicts. Fate is testing you. It will wish to see you triumph through your courage alone, breaking down the doors of the city. And we will be more than the gods, who were not touched by this chance destiny which launched us on this enterprise of death and resurrection. We are living dangerously, my love. You hear the sign on your forehead. We belong to a different race. When we become conscious of all our bodies at once, crossing the most diverse vibrations of the ether, we will know how to love each other solely with the glance, with the pleasure that never dies. She turned towards him without letting go of his hand. I am the scabbard of your sword, Sheathe me gently, softly, tonight. Do not break me. Your sword is double-edged. Its scabbard is called mine, blood memory. The memory of the love lost at the beginning of time flows through the blood. Seek me in your blood. Keep it pure. When you remember what your blood tells you, sing it. You will be a warrior troubadour, a minnesanger, who will have sung our dream of resurrection and eternal love for all eternity. Hail. The tiny spark. She was dying. Only a little time remained to her on this earth and in her lovely body. He stayed by her side, trying to fight the angel of love and death who possessed them both, the consummation of the myth and the legend. As the end approached, his grief increased because he loved her with an intensity that was equaled only by the fire which burned there, causing him to doubt everything that had been said, his search, his dream. What if none of this were certain? He asked himself. What if she were never to return to life? If he were never to find her again? If only nothingness lay at the end of this journey, this road which was now coming to an end? She, too, seemed to waver, faced with the inevitable. There were moments where her eyes became fixed on a point beyond the fire and the walls of transparent ice, losing themselves in the diaphanous midday sky. Losing themselves in the diaphanous midday sky. After death, somewhere, I believe that a balance will be achieved. Immortality is not given to all, but what is the qualification for attaining it? It is not kindness, nor sacrifice, nor intelligence, nor even a feeling for beauty. Perhaps it is honor and loyalty. One is born different. Another day, she opened her eyes very wide and looked at him in that indescribable way that he can only compare with the impression produced by the morning star at dawn, when it sends us a message through its deep, velvety light, filled with nostalgia for the universe that lie on the other side of other suns. He raised herself up with difficulty on her bed of branches. Will the laurels flower again some day? Within us is a tiny spark. I felt it light up last night. Hope reawakens. And in her musical voice, which was now very weak, she recited a poem which she would compose in another turn of the wheel. The tenuous melancholy spins its delicate web in the soul, and the muffled murmur of memories darkens space. The renewed certainty of eternal development rises out of infinity, and slowly impregnates each thread of frozen mist. All is death, conclusion, end. The leaves fall, resigned, pained, by their immense fragility, twisted by the strident clamor of the being which struggles to escape the inevitable. The soul turns and turns within the black space, conceiving a vague desire for self. The spark creates. The warm flame grows and grows, crackling and magical. The mists disperse in its heat. In the silence of the white peaks blooms the fiery lily of eternal love. The exchange of hearts. Come, hurry. She asked him to kiss her, and with her last remaining strength, she embraced him. Kissing him with open lips, she sighed deep into him and gave him her heart. Now you must breathe out inside me, she whispered. Give me your heart. Don't leave me without a heart, my love. He obeyed her and felt his heart die in her, deep within her. For the last time, she looked at him intently. Then her head fell back and her eyes closed. Now they would never see again in this world. He held her tightly and implored her, "Don't go, don't leave me alone in this house of ice." The left-handed sign. He put out the fire, collected the scattered branches together, and went out into the forest in search of resin. With his sword, he made a cut in the bark of a conifer tree and drew some off. He mixed it with some water and ice from the lake and returned to the cabin. He undressed the body of his beloved and began to cover it with the resin. He imagined that by doing this, he would preserve it through all the turnings of the wheel, until he could bring it back to life as beautiful as before. As he went to spread the perfumed resin over her left breast, he discovered a red spot on it, the sign of the walkers of the dawn, of the seekers of the city of dawn, the left-handed swastika, which signifies the return to the nuptial home, the land of resurrection and eternal love. The ring of resurrection. It was on examining the ring that he had the idea of embalming the body of his beloved. The Egyptian pharaohs had lost the faculty of bringing the dead back to life. Wasn't the mummy a sign? They hoped to preserve the body until that Hyperborean science was rediscovered one day, when the Golden Age returned. Did they preserve the key of the seminal atom, which, when it was deciphered in the eternal return, would breathe fresh life into the image and the figure, and also into memory and glory? On the agate set in the ring was a silhouette surrounded by carved inscriptions. The image was that of a mummy, apparently a woman, with her arms crossed over her breasts. He thought he could make out the name Phocia. Perhaps it had been Elohim's name in an earlier turn of the wheel. The mummy was the symbol used to represent Osiris, the irreproducible god of resurrection. As he examined this magic stone, he knew that one day he would be able to decipher its message. Midday. Within his breast there now beat a woman's heart. Her blood now flowed through his veins, mingling with his and inspiring his every act. He built a sledge of conifer, larch, and laurel branches, and laid her on it, covering her with her red gown, foreshadowing the mantle of immortality he would one day give her. He wove her a crown of cinnamon leaves, that sacred bush of the South Pole, and of red coppihues, the emblematic flower, the bellflower of blood drawn from his woman's heart. As he dragged the sledge over the snow, he tried to imagine what that timeless time would be like when they would be together, far beyond the stars, like rays of light, with bodies that only they could see, like their present ones, but also very different. They would stand motionless at the center of eternity, because they would be on the other side of the light, in the chosen gesture, like statues, like cathedrals, like the temple of the sun and the moon, like the summit of the mountain, like the trees which live their whole lives without moving, like the oak trees of Hyperborea, like the apple trees of Avalon. And the chosen gesture would be that of their first kiss, like the touch of a snowflake or a sigh from the light of the morning star. They would leave eternity behind after an eternity to take an active part in creation, helping those who were born bearing the sign to enter the city, within which they would live with their faces, losing and finding each other, separate and together, but never lost. They would play that game, dance that dance, like a combination of notes and sounds, which was played and danced far above this earth's visible and audible scale, in the highest range of the light of another world. It doesn't matter if a battle has been lost. It is a dance, a game. For our myth of A-Mor, it is only important to fight it properly, with honor and loyalty to the end. This has always been the way to win. He reached the pyramid-shaped rock. He felt clearly that he had been doing this for an eternity, repeating the same action time and time again. He dug a grave there and placed her inside it, on her sledge of branches and flowers. He covered her with snow and ice. In this way, she would be preserved forever. He took his sword and traced the sign and the lines. While you sleep, I keep watch, my beloved. The disc. Standing beside her tomb and the midday rock, he thought he heard a rustling sound. Soon it became soft music, and the entire firmament was covered with green rays of light. A disk of light stopped in space in front of him. Indescribable, it was throbbing, almost as if it was breathing, and it looked at him as if it was sending him a message, while at the same time it read his thoughts and feelings. For a long time they gazed at each other, until the light began to move around and upwards, like an eye blinking. It closed like an eyelid and moved rapidly towards the horizon, as if concentrating on a point, until it became no more than a star, which grew paler and paler. In a blinding flash, he realized that he had been in the presence of the Grail of the Andes and hadn't asked the question, nor ordered it, to take him with it. He had lost the given opportunity for both of them, and he would have to wait another 700 years before the laurel flowered again.